That book's not going to be unpublished for very long. Janet Claire? Janet, come up and say something, please. Hi, Janet.
I don't do this. I was more afraid. I was more afraid not to do it. You're mine, we all thought. My teacher, my mentor, my friend. You understand me. What I hope and want and dream. Make me better. Make me see. That's all we wanted from Les. Everything. And remarkably, that's what we got. As a gifted teacher, he had the ability to speak to each of us. You will bring in one page to read, he said that first night, first class. If your voice isn't on that page, you don't need it. Wow, I remember thinking, he's right. How simple, how profound, how true. So like many of you, I gorged myself on his classes for years. I showed up at every workshop, and often, acting the mother, I chided those who didn't commit to him, to the group, to their own writing. But Les seemed to take it in stride. And as I continued to work on my own, I never lost touch, making an excuse to meet, to talk, always mindful of his time, because I knew, above all, he had work to do. I think we all wanted, still want, to make him proud, and more than anything, to place the name Les Plesko at the top of the acknowledgments in the book he encouraged us to write. Thank you.
I think we've all noticed the ratio of male to female speakers. Jody, can you come up, please?
Hi there. I'm a kind of very poor public speaker. I'm a very nervous public speaker. I'm not a nervous public reader, so I have two excerpts from No Stopping Train. But so I wasn't going to say anything, but being here, how can I not? I go back to Kate Braverman's class in the early 90s, and Michelle was right. I mean, it was this atmosphere of kind of brutality. It was perfect for Les, because it was this kind of utter brutality that was mixed with permission to say anything, which is how it has to be. And it was kind of for the purpose of stripping everything away. And I remember so much kind of the fear and excitement that is kind of the fear and excitement of writing itself. But bringing a work in and reading it, and everybody would talk, and Kate would talk, but then afterwards, I mean, everybody's voice was valuable, but we just looked to Les. We just looked. His was the first paper. You'd like get outside because you didn't want to shuffle through the papers, and you'd find his. And almost always the line or two or the paragraph that he would pull out was, for me, it was always the one that I was the most afraid to write, the one that made me shake when I put it on the paper, when I typed it, and there was just something always with Les. It was so gratifying. It was so utterly satisfying to know that he was the North Star on my road to writing, and I think it's true of all of us. And the other thing I wanted to say about Kate's class is we were all, Janet said this morning, we were all kind of born together of that time. But I look out to all of you that I don't know, and the being born just keeps on going on and on and on. And it's Les, and it's our writer's world in our writer's life. It's just so hugely vast. So it's infinite. It's just, it's so sad to be without him, but look at how he will always go on. I just have to kind of feel that today. So I feel his terrible loss, but I also feel his presence in his spirit, even though he would have turned away at the door and not stayed for this. But we're going to insist that he be here. So anyway, I'm going to read, the first thing I'm going to read is, it is from No Stopping Train, and it's from the point of view of Margit, who is the female, one of the female protagonists. And it's Les's Hungarian novel, so in a way it's to know him in a different way. Oh, the thing I wanted to say before I started to read was that Les's writing per se, when I was going through the novel last night that Jamie sent us, I started, because I was scrolling through it on my computer, so I started to read it, I started to read things out loud. So if something hit me, I started to read it out loud. And the more I would read something out loud, I heard Les's voice in the cadence of the words. I could hear him. I thought, oh my God, it was like being with him all over again. And I won't get that, but I'm gonna try to read it the way I heard it when I read it out loud. I used to assume certitude. Alma in her robe, father at his desk. I was the daughter playing somewhere in the house, in the yard, sometimes too far, but the chestnut vendor brought me back. Our supper was coffee that year, lumps of sugar dissolving to brown, the same shade as the city at dusk. My father's slicked hair was Budapest's color back then. The three of us stood in the street. He chewed his charcoal pills. History's ruined my stomach, he said. Thank you, Les. History's ruined my stomach, he said. I could see he was telling the truth. The proof was his tongue and black teeth. My bicycle, tipped on its side in the gutter, was red. My father kept wiping his eyes. Cold wind blew through my dress, already faded, though he only brought it the previous month. It seems loose, its bow lost. Cheap, like everything else, Alma said, her hair stirred by wind, not bothering to comb it away from her face. I studied her shoes, scuffed and wet. Seeing her out of the house made me anxious and tired. Sweat stains spread under her arms, though she must have been cold and embarrassed, and only her robe, exposed to whoever might pass. She fingered its hem as if it might turn to ash, her bare arms goose-fleshed. Rain pelted her uncovered head. Her breath came in ragged white puffs. She said, "Don't leave me here with a child." Words like stones, bitten-lipped. She took a step back, ankles weak, on the verge of a slip. I looked up at our window, opened out, so that the war might fly in. I said, "Are we going to die?" Sandor, we did die. What happened once? It had the look of nothing, a storm, a light rain. The war came. My father left for the front. He said, "When I come back," he meant if. In the city, the woman who I had become wiped marzipan glaze from her mouth. She picked her teeth with her nails while you practiced your forgeries, already inventing your fate. My hands that touch the train's glass. I'm just like my mother now, tired of my feet and hands, my own cheap sentiment. So here is my hand, where my wedding band also leaves its white mark. I never did feel safe wearing it. My thin shift with its cigarette burn in its lap from when we both fell asleep after love. Then you woke me up, said you were on fire, but I put you out. I've been moving towards you, or away, since back then. My hands held in front of my face, as if trying to hold back the wind, scraps of newspapers blowing by fast. So that's the first one. I'm going to go ahead and read the second one too. It's not that long, it's only a page and a half. This is Margit much later, at a time of political strife in Hungary, and a time when there are, it's a time of purges and midnight arrests by the communist government. and Margit has been arrested and taken off to jail. She finished her last cigarette. Between the blue car and her fate, she lifted her face to the rain. She felt a raw, tender love for the pigeon-swept light, for this country she hated and feared. Under its gray proletarian sky, how women alighted from trams in cheap, wrinkled dresses she'd mended for them. The way cold rain fell on the prison's gray stones seized her breath, made an ache down her arms to her wrists. All night she paced her cell's radius of 2 steps. The blood on the floor was still wet. She covered her ears, chewed her hair against echoes of insults inflicted on flesh. Margit wet herself. A daughter, a wife, what difference did all that make now? In the morning they gave her a paper to sign, and she signed it, whatever it said. She missed her yellow valise with its scissors and needle and thimble and thread. It was all she had left. 24 women and her on a truck, waving toilet paper farewells. They blew kisses, tossed wishes from over Elizabeth Bridge. She felt dizzy with stale, bitter sweat and the sour smell of women who'd also peed in their pants. What she desired was espresso with sugar, a sewing machine, West German cigarettes, a bolt of shepherd's check cloth or batiste. Sandor come home from a job he couldn't be shot for or hung. The tilt of his glasses, her yearning to lie across sheets mussed with twilight erased through cool hands. His unshaven cheek on her thigh, and impossible limbs easing afternoon light into bells. The river's reflection of lamps, the Danube's slow curved esplanade littered with walnut shells. Almost Christmas, her mother is kind and not dead, and the 3 of them walk to the square through a forgiving snow toward a band playing all the old leaders from war once again. But the truck had pulled up to the train, and the seats on the train were torn out, so they all had to stand, just like dirty Jews, someone said. Outside the train's window, wind parted wheat over low rolling hills, metal blades of mechanical sides swiped iron through the earth's yellow hair. It seemed pointless to cry, so she held her face to the glass, let the rain weep instead.
I forgot to mention that there's composition notebooks on all the tables, and they're for Les, so please write something in it when you feel that thing. Jamie Schaffner, can you please come up?
Hi, Jamie Schaffner, student of Les. So when I was thinking about today and what I might want to say, I realized that so many of us here probably were in a workshop of some form or other with Les. And the amazing thing is you could be in the same workshop the very same week, that very same evening or day with someone else, and everybody in that room would have a different experience with Les in that very same day, on that very same workshop. And I think that was because, well, I know it was because he could dial in on what you were saying on your page in that moment, and also say it in a way that you could hear it. And he also took into factor, and all this was happening on the fly, instantaneously, where your work was in its own level of maturation. So I thought that what I'd do is give you a little bit of my experience with Les in workshop. So we were told to bring in that one page, double space, 1-inch margins. Oh, and about that one page, years later I said, "Hey Les, what's up with the one page? How did you come up with that?" "Oh," he said, "I was in this workshop, and sometimes the writing would go, oh." 6 pages, 10 pages, 15 pages. There was no limit. It was great, he said, if the work was great. But when it was lousy, it was agonizing. So he said, when I was going to do my own thing, I thought, I'm going to do 1 page. Because even if it's cruddy, I could bear it. Anyone can bear anything for a page, he said. So that's the 1 page. And so I brought my 1 page in, and I read it, and Les bore it. And he said, I'm getting that your character is thirsty. I come in the next week and I bring in my page and I read it and wait for Les's comments. You know, I noticed there's a bottle of water mentioned on that page. Maybe your character could drink from it. I come in the 3rd week and I read my page and I wait for Les's comments. Juice. There's a lot of juice on this page. Apple and orange and apple again. I come in that 4th week. I read my page, and I barely get to the end. That last word, he says, "That was awesome!" He looks at me with that good eye, the other one roving. I said, "Oh, thanks, Les. I figured out this thing about my character. She was thirsty." And my workshop mates, they all laughed, right? And above the laughter, Les said, "Good move. Keep doing that." And we did, he and I, for 120 weeks. The world and art is in a better place for Les Plesko, having lived in it. Rest, 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 less.
Thanks, Jamie. Irene, are you ready? It's another female.